All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're not just talking about general trends. We are looking at a very specific, time-stamped prediction for the real-world assets sector. That's RWA. And it's all centered on a major event forecasted for the first quarter of 2026.
Here's the headline. The prediction is that a massive chunk, we're talking 62%, of all the capital in the RWA space is structurally vulnerable. It's exposed to what's being called the filtering event, a huge capital reallocation that's expected to hit between January 15th and March 31st, 2026.
Now, to really understand the stakes here, you have to look at the scale. The RWA sector just blew past the $35 billion mark in tokenized assets. So when we say 62% is vulnerable, well, you can do the math. That is a massive amount of capital that could be on the move.
What's so interesting about this whole thing is just how specific it is. This isn't some vague feeling. It's a testable, falsifiable forecast with hard dates. The prediction was locked in on December 29, 2025. The event itself is forecast to unfold during Q1 2026, and there's even a follow-up analysis promised for April 1st. You can actually check the results.
So you might be asking, what could possibly cause such a dramatic shakeup? Well, this prediction isn't based on just one thing. It's a perfect storm, really a convergence of three distinct regulatory and operational triggers. Let's break down each one.
The first trigger, it's all about tokenized treasury bills. Right now, there's a lot of ambiguity around them, but that's expected to change. And when it does, the consequences for many platforms are going to be immediate and pretty significant. The setup is basically this. The SEC is expected to issue a bulletin that officially classifies tokenized T-bills as securities. And you know, the signals are already out there in the public domain. Take Ondo Finance, for example. In October 2025, they were asking the SEC to delay this very framework. Then, fast forward to December, and they delay their own product. This points to a classic problem.
And this problem has a name, alignment drift. It's that critical, frustrating gap when your product and engineering teams are ready to ship, but your legal and compliance partners just aren't there yet. It's probably the #1 reason for delays in this kind of environment.
So what are the odds of this first trigger, the SEC guidance, actually happening by the end of January 2026? Well, the calculated probability is high. We're looking at 85%. This isn't a long shot. It's something the data suggests is very likely to happen.
Okay, let's move on to the second trigger, because this is where things really start to build. This one is all about stablecoins, and a huge piece of legislation known as the Stablecoin Control Act, which is set to completely rewrite the rules for anyone issuing them. In a nutshell, this act is going to require stablecoin issuers to become, for all intents and purposes, banks, and the market is already reacting. You can see massive capital flowing into compliant players like Circle, while smaller, non-bank issuers are seeing their assets either stagnate or drain away. The key phrase here is that institutional money is already pre-positioning for the change.
And the probability of this Stablecoin Control Act passing by mid-March 2026? It's even higher. It's estimated at 90%. Honestly, with the political will to regulate and bring stablecoins into the mainstream, this feels like a near certainty.
The third trigger is maybe the most subtle, and because of that, maybe the most dangerous. It's not a new law. It's an operational update. It's a compliance shock coming from the major custodians, the very foundations of the entire ecosystem.
So the big trust companies are getting ready to roll out much stricter know your customer and anti-money laundering rules. And when you look at the hiring data, a really stark picture emerges. Only a handful of the top platforms are actually staffing up their compliance teams. The rest, they seem to be stuck in growth mode, focusing on product, and they're just not prepared for this new operational burden.
The probability of this custodian-level shock causing major disruptions, we're talking service suspensions, new investment restrictions, by the end of February 2026 is pegged at 75%.
Okay, so you have these three different triggers. How do they actually combine to create this filtering event? It's not one big crash. Think of it more as a sequential process, a reallocation of capital and talent that plays out over three distinct phases.
It's really a domino effect. First, the SEC guidance hits, forcing the unprepared T-bill platforms to hit pause. Capital immediately starts flowing to the compliant Tier 1 players. Next, the Stablecoin Act passes, which squeezes liquidity for anyone relying on those non-bank issuers. And finally, the custodian updates create operational chaos, causing delays and a brain drain as top talent leaves struggling firms for the safety of stable ones.
And this whole process creates very clear winners and losers. You have your Tier 1 platforms, think Circle, Franklin Templeton. They have the regulatory and operational muscle, so they're set to absorb a ton of market share. On the other end, the Tier 3 platforms are facing a real existential threat. And then there's that contested middle ground, Tier 2, where their fate really just depends on how fast they can adapt.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why does this matter for you? Well, this isn't just some interesting thought experiment. It's an urgent framework for auditing risk, whether you happen to be building one of these platforms or allocating capital to one.
If you're a platform operator, these are the brutally honest questions you need to be asking your team right now. If the answer to any of these is no, or even maybe, you are squarely in the danger zone, and the clock is absolutely ticking. And if you're an allocator, an investor, it's time to look past just the assets under management and the flashy yield numbers. Your due diligence needs a new checklist. Does this platform have the structural integrity to survive these shocks? If the answer isn't a clear yes, you need an exit plan before this filtering really begins. And the most crucial thing to remember through all of this is that the entire forecast is designed to be verified. This isn't based on gut feelings or wild speculation. It's a model built on math that's been applied to public signals you can go and look up yourself: regulatory filings, hiring patterns, product timelines.
Which really just leaves us with one last question. Is this a true model of the future? A genuine case of foresight derived from math? Or is it just a very compelling story? Well, the dates are set, the triggers are defined, and by April 1st, 2026, we'll all have the answer.